The first insult came wrapped in a smile. At the annual Harper family reunion, my daughter-in-law stood in the middle of the backyard, lifted her champagne glass, and grinned at the crowd as though she had rehearsed the moment for weeks. "I'd like to make a toast," she announced. "Here's to the woman who always shows up empty-handed but somehow still expects the best seat at the table." Laughter spread across the patio, not the polite kind. It was loud, eager, and cruel. Every face turned toward me. Some smiled awkwardly. Others didn't even try to hide their amusement. My daughter-in-law, Melissa, stood proudly beside my son, Ryan, waiting for me to shrink into silence. Ryan kept staring at his plate. He never laughed, but he never defended me either. Somehow that hurt even more. I was 63 years old. Life had already taught me how to survive heartbreak. After losing my husband 11 years earlier, I rebuilt everything from scratch. I managed every bill, maintained my small home, planted my own vegetables, and learned to live comfortably without asking anyone for help. I wasn't weak, but watching my own son remain silent while his wife humiliated me felt like losing him all over again. I slowly stood from my chair. Every conversation stopped. Instead of arguing, I picked up my water glass. I smiled. "Since we're making toasts," I said calmly, "I'd like to thank the family that's about to discover who has really been paying their mortgage." Silence. Dauphinsault silence. Melissa's smile disappeared instantly. Ryan looked at me as though I had spoken another language. His face turned pale. "What are you doing, Mom?" he whispered. I looked at him gently, finally choosing myself. I placed my glass back on the table, picked up my purse, then walked toward my car without looking back. No one followed me. No one apologized. The entire drive home was strangely peaceful. For nearly 2 years, I had carried a burden that no one at that reunion knew existed. Ryan had lost his management position after company layoffs. Melissa refused to give up the expensive house she loved. She insisted that downsizing would embarrass them in front of their friends. Instead of adjusting their lifestyle, they came to me. "It'll only be for a few months," Ryan had promised. I believed him. Every month I transferred money directly to their mortgage company, month after month, season after season. 24 months passed before I realized the temporary favor had quietly become a permanent expectation. I wasn't wealthy. My house had been paid off years earlier. I drove an aging sedan. Most of my clothes came from discount stores. Every dollar I saved allowed them to keep driving luxury vehicles, eating at expensive restaurants, and renovating rooms that didn't actually need remodeling. Whenever someone complimented their beautiful home, Melissa accepted the praise as though she'd built everything herself. Not once did she tell anyone who had quietly kept that house from slipping away. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I knew exactly what needed to happen. Inside my kitchen, I brewed a cup of tea and sat beside the window overlooking my garden. The roses were blooming. They reminded me that healthy things only grow after careful pruning. I opened my laptop, logged into my online banking account. The next mortgage payment was scheduled to leave my account in 5 days. One small red button appeared on the screen, "Cancel automatic payment." The cursor hovered over it. For a moment, I thought about my grandchildren. Then I remembered Melissa's toast. I remembered Ryan lowering his eyes instead of standing beside me. My finger clicked. A confirmation box appeared. "Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment?" I smiled. Yes, one click. That was all it took. 2 years of silent sacrifice ended in less than 3 seconds. My phone began vibrating almost immediately. Ryan. I let it ring. A minute later. Melissa. Ignored, then Ryan again. Voicemail after voicemail arrived while I quietly finished my tea. For the first time in years, I didn't feel responsible for solving someone else's problems. I walked outside and watered my flowers. The evening breeze felt lighter than it had in months. Some people believe respect comes from how much you give. I had finally learned something different. Real respect begins the moment you stop allowing people to treat your kindness like an obligation. As the sun disappeared behind the trees, I realized tomorrow wouldn't simply be another day. It would be the first day my son and his wife had to stand on their own, and whether they were ready or not, Their safety net was gone. Monday morning arrived with more silence than I expected. The world outside carried on as usual. Neighbors walked their dogs. Children waited for school buses. Birds landed in my garden as though nothing had changed. But inside another house across town, I knew panic had already begun. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and stepped onto my porch. My phone buzzed again. Ryan. This time he left a voicemail. "Mom, please call me. Everyone's upset about yesterday. Melissa didn't mean anything by it. We can work this out." I deleted the message without replying. An hour later, another voicemail arrived. His voice had changed. The confidence was gone. "Mom." I checked the bank account. "The mortgage payment isn't scheduled anymore. Please tell me it's a mistake." It wasn't. A few minutes later, Melissa sent a text. "You're acting childish over one harmless joke. Ryan can't cover everything himself. Stop punishing your own family and fix this." I read every word once, then deleted the message. There was nothing left to discuss. People who only apologized after losing money rarely felt genuine regret. Around lunchtime, I walked into the spare bedroom. For almost 2 years, it had become Melissa's personal storage room. Holiday decorations, dot and darn handbags she never used. Boxes filled with children's toys, suitcases. Baby clothes. None of it belonged in my house anymore. I found several large cardboard boxes in the garage and began packing everything neatly. Nothing was damaged. Nothing was thrown away. I simply returned every item to its rightful owner. Halfway through packing, my daughter, Claire, called. She lived nearly 4 hours away, but somehow always sensed when something important had happened. "Tell me the rumors aren't true," she said with a laugh. "You finally stopped paying?" I did. There was a brief pause, then she sighed with relief. "It's about time." "You aren't angry?" "Angry?" Claire chuckled. "Mom, I've been waiting for this day for 2 years." I smiled while sealing another box with tape. "Ryan thinks I've lost my mind." "No," Claire replied softly. "He's finally losing his safety blanket." Her words settled in my heart. She was right. For years I had mistaken rescuing Ryan for loving him. In reality, I had only delayed the lessons adulthood was trying to teach him. By mid-afternoon, 6 neatly packed boxes sat beside my front door. I hadn't even finished sweeping the guest room before tires screeched into my driveway. Melissa climbed out of her SUV before the engine stopped. Ryan hurried behind her. Neither of them looked happy. Ryan reached the porch first. "Mom," his eyes landed on the stacked boxes. "What is all this?" "Your belongings," I answered calmly. Melissa marched up the steps. "You packed our things." "I packed your things that were taking up my guest room." She folded her arms. "This is ridiculous." "No," I replied. "What's ridiculous is believing my home should become your storage unit forever." Ryan rubbed his forehead. "Mom, please, can we just talk inside?" "We can talk right here." Melissa's patience disappeared. "So you're really doing this?" "I already did." She laughed bitterly. "Over a toast?" "No." I looked directly into her eyes. "Over 2 years of disrespect." Ryan stepped forward. "We don't have enough money for next week's payment." "I know. We're almost $1,000 short." "I know." His shoulders dropped. "You knew?" "I've known for months." Melissa spoke sharply. "If we lose that house, it'll be your fault." I shook my head. "No, it'll be the result of living beyond your means." She stared at me in disbelief. "You expect us to sell things?" "I expect 2 healthy adults to solve problems without asking a retired widow to finance their lifestyle." Ryan looked embarrassed. Melissa looked furious. "We have the children's private academy. Public schools educate millions of successful people. My SUV has payments, then sell it. The kitchen remodel isn't finished. It never needed remodeling. Every excuse they offered had the same answer: choices. Every financial crisis they faced came from decisions they had made together. For years, I'd protected them from those consequences. Not anymore. Melissa suddenly pointed toward my front door. "You owe us after everything we've done for you." I almost laughed. "What exactly have you done for me?" She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Ryan quietly bent down and picked up one of the boxes. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I never thought you'd actually stop." "I know." He looked at me with tired eyes. "I guess I never believed you could." I didn't either. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then I noticed my spare house key hanging from Ryan's keychain. I reached forward, removed it gently, and slipped it into my pocket. "I'll need this back," I said. Ryan didn't argue. Melissa exploded. "So now we aren't even trusted. It's not about trust. It's about boundaries." She shook her head angrily. "If you keep acting like this, don't expect to see your grandchildren." The threat hung between us once. It would have broken my heart. Today, it didn't change my answer. "I'll always love them," I said quietly, "but I won't purchase the right to be their grandmother." Ryan lowered his head. Melissa grabbed another box. Without another word, they carried everything back to their SUV. As they drove away, I stood alone on my porch. For the first time in years, my home truly felt like mine again. The next few days were surprisingly quiet. No phone calls, no emotional messages, no unexpected visits. It felt less like peace and more like the calm before a storm. Instead of worrying about Ryan and Melissa, I focused on something I had neglected for years: myself. I repainted the guest room a warm shade of blue. I donated old furniture that no longer served a purpose. I signed up for a pottery class at the local community center, something I had wanted to do for years but always postponed because I was too busy helping everyone else. Every evening I slept better than I had in a long time. Then Friday arrived. At exactly 7:15 that morning, Ryan's sedan rolled into my driveway. He stepped out alone. His shoulders sagged with exhaustion. Dark circles surrounded his eyes, and his clothes looked as though he had slept in them. I invited him onto the porch, but neither of us went inside. The morning air was cool, and the silence between us carried more honesty than words ever could. "Mom," he began quietly, "we're short." I nodded. I figured. "We're still missing almost $1,000. He stared at the wooden porch floor before continuing. "I've called everyone I know. I know. My bank denied another loan. I expected that." He finally looked at me. "I just need one more month." There it was, the sentence I had heard dozens of times over the past 2 years. Just one more month, one more payment, one more favor, one more rescue. I gently shook my head. "No." His expression fell. "I'll pay you back. I believe you want to, and I will, I know." "Then why won't you help me?" I folded my hands in my lap. "Because helping you today would hurt you tomorrow." Ryan frowned. "I don't understand. For 2 years I solved problems you should have been solving yourself." He remained silent. "You and Melissa built a life based on money neither of you earned. Every month I stepped in. You delayed making the difficult decisions responsible adults eventually have to make." He slowly sat in the chair across from me. "I honestly thought things would improve. So did I. I kept expecting a promotion." "I know. I thought Melissa would spend less." I gave him a sympathetic smile. "But she didn't." He sighed heavily. "No. And because I kept paying the bills, neither of you had any reason to change." Ryan rubbed his face with both hands. "I've made such a mess." "You've made mistakes." He looked up. "There's a difference. Everyone makes mistakes. Only some people choose to learn from them." Before either of us could speak again, another vehicle turned into the driveway, Melissa. She climbed out quickly, slammed the driver's door, and marched toward the porch. "I knew you'd come here," she snapped. Ryan stood immediately. "Melissa?" "No." She pointed directly at me. "This is exactly what you wanted. What did I want? You wanted us to fail." I remained seated. "No. You wanted to prove you were better than us. I wanted you to become independent." She laughed bitterly. "Independent?" She pointed toward Ryan. "He hasn't slept in 3 nights. I can see that. We're fighting every day. I'm sorry to hear that. The children hear everything. I truly hope that changes." Nothing I said gave her the argument she wanted. Her frustration grew with every calm response. Finally, she blurted out, "If you loved your son, you'd help him." I looked at Ryan before answering. If I didn't love him, I'd keep making him dependent on me. The words hit harder than I expected. Ryan slowly lowered his eyes. Melissa crossed her arms. "So that's it? That's it?" She took a deep breath. "We're listing the SUV this weekend." I nodded. "That's a responsible decision. We're pulling the twins out of private school. They'll be fine. We're canceling our vacation. I think that's wise." She stared at me as though she expected sympathy. Instead, she found acceptance, because these weren't punishments. They were normal financial decisions every household sometimes has to make. Ryan quietly spoke. "We've also talked to a real estate agent." Melissa looked away. "We might have to sell the house." The sentence seemed almost impossible for her to say aloud. I smiled gently. A smaller home isn't a smaller life. No one spoke for nearly a minute. The breeze moved through the trees above us. Finally, Ryan reached into his pocket. He handed me a folded piece of paper. It was every payment I had made over the past 2 years. Each date, each amount, every mortgage transfer. "I added it all together," he whispered. The total sat at the bottom of the page. It was enough money to have completely changed my own retirement. Tears filled his eyes. "I never realized how much you sacrificed." I looked at the paper, then folded it closed again. "I didn't give you that money to keep score." He swallowed hard. "I know. I gave it because I loved you." He nodded slowly. "And I forgot that love isn't something you're supposed to repay with silence." For the first time since the reunion, Ryan truly understood what had been lost. Not the money, the trust. That afternoon, after Ryan and Melissa left, I sat alone in my living room for a long time. Not because I doubted my decision, because I finally understood how slowly unhealthy relationships are built. No one wakes up one morning and decides to become someone's financial crutch. It happens little by little. One favor becomes another. A temporary solution becomes a permanent arrangement. Before you realize it, your generosity has become someone else's entitlement. I promised myself I would never allow that to happen again. The following Saturday, Claire arrived for a weekend visit carrying 2 cups of coffee and a box of fresh pastries from my favorite bakery. She hugged Top tightly before saying a single word. "You look different." I smiled. "In a good way?" She nodded. "You look peaceful." We sat on the back patio overlooking my vegetable garden. For years, our conversations had revolved around Ryan's financial troubles. This time, we talked about travel, books, and the pottery class I had recently joined. It felt refreshing to have a life that wasn't centered around fixing someone else's problems. Halfway through breakfast, Claire's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and sighed. Melissa made another social media post. I raised an eyebrow. "What now?" Claire turned the phone toward me. Melissa had written a long message about toxic relatives who abandon family when life becomes difficult. Hundreds of people had reacted with sympathy. Most of them knew only one side of the story. I handed the phone back without another look. "Doesn't that bother you?" Claire asked. "Not anymore. But she's making you look heartless. People who know me don't need an explanation." Claire smiled. "I wish I had your patience." "It isn't patience." "What is it?" "Freedom." She looked puzzled. "I've stopped worrying about opinions I can't control." Later that afternoon, we visited a local farmer's market. I bought fresh flowers, homemade jam, and a small ceramic vase crafted by a local artist. For years, I would have talked myself out of spending money on something unnecessary. Every extra dollar had gone toward Ryan's household. Now I was learning that enjoying the fruits of my own hard work wasn't selfish. It was healthy. Monday morning brought another surprise. As I prepared to leave for pottery class, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I found Melissa standing alone. She looked completely different from the confident woman who had mocked me at the reunion. Her expensive clothes had been replaced by simple jeans and a plain sweater. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. She held a covered casserole dish with both hands. "I made this," she said quietly. I looked at the dish, then back at her. "I'm not here to argue." I stepped aside. "Come in." She entered slowly, looking around the living room. Everything seemed unfamiliar to her now, not because the furniture had changed, because the relationship had. We sat across from each other in silence for several moments. Finally, she spoke. "We sold my SUV yesterday." I heard. I cried all the way home. I imagine that wasn't easy. She gave a weak laugh. It wasn't really about the car. I waited. It was admitting we couldn't afford the life we were pretending to live. Those words surprised me. For the first time, I heard honesty instead of blame. She stared at her hands. I've spent weeks being angry." I remained silent. "At first I blamed you." She looked up. "Then I blamed Ryan." Her voice grew softer. "Eventually I had to admit the truth." "What truth?" "I built a lifestyle around money that wasn't mine." The room became quiet again. "I never thanked you." "No." "I never respected how hard you worked." "No." "I treated your generosity like an obligation." I simply nodded. Tears formed in her eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness today. I appreciate your honesty." She wiped her cheeks. "I don't know how to fix this." "You've already started." She frowned. "How?" "By accepting responsibility." For several moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, she stood. "I should go." As she reached the door, she paused. "The house goes on the market next week." "I know. I'm scared." So was I. She turned toward me. "When?" "The day I realized my own son believed my love came with a monthly payment." Her eyes filled with tears once more. "I'm sorry." The apology wasn't dramatic, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. After she left, I placed the casserole in the refrigerator and sat quietly beside the kitchen window. Forgiveness didn't erase the past. Neither did it rebuild trust overnight. Those things would take time, but genuine change always begins with one difficult conversation. And for the first time since that painful reunion, I believed my family might actually have one. 3 months passed faster than I expected. Autumn arrived, covering the streets in shades of gold and crimson. Life settled into a rhythm I hadn't experienced in years. Every Tuesday I attended pottery class. Every Thursday I met friends for lunch. On weekends I worked in my garden or curled up with a good novel instead of worrying about someone else's bills. For the first time since my husband passed away, I was truly living instead of merely surviving. One Sunday afternoon, Ryan called. "Mom," he said, "would it be okay if we came over for lunch?" I smiled. "Of course. And Melissa will be with us. I'll be happy to see all of you." When they arrived, I noticed the difference immediately. Their luxury SUV was gone. Instead, they stepped out of an older sedan that had clearly seen better days. The children jumped out first, laughing as they raced toward my front porch. I opened my arms, and both grandchildren wrapped me in the kind of hug only children can give, pure honest, without conditions. Ryan carried a homemade pie, while Melissa held a bowl of fresh salad. Years earlier, they would have arrived expecting everything to be prepared for them. Today, they came ready to contribute. That small gesture meant more than they probably realized. Lunch felt different. No one argued. No one boasted. The conversation centered on school projects, gardening, neighborhood events, and the twins' newest hobbies. For the first time in a very long while, we sounded like a family instead of business partners negotiating another transaction. After the meal, Ryan helped wash the dishes while Melissa played a board game with the children in the living room. When the kitchen was finally quiet, Ryan leaned against the counter. "We sold the house," I heard. "We moved into a townhouse closer to my office." "How does it feel?" He smiled. "Smaller," I laughed, "and less stressful." He dried another plate before continuing. "We actually have money left at the end of the month now." "I'm glad." "I picked up some consulting work." "That's wonderful." "And Melissa started working 3 days a week at a local design studio." "I'm proud of both of you." Ryan stopped drying dishes. "I used to think success meant looking successful." He looked down at the kitchen towel in his hands. "Now I realize peace is worth a lot more than appearances." I nodded. "That's an important lesson." He grew quiet. "I also wanted to tell you something." I waited. "I've been setting money aside every month." "For what?" "To repay everything you spent on us." I reached over and gently placed my hand on his arm. "No." He looked surprised. "But I owe you. You owed me respect." His eyes met mine. "And you're giving me that now." I still feel guilty. "Guilt can teach you something," I said softly. "But don't let it become the place where you live." He slowly nodded. "I understand." Later that afternoon, Melissa joined us on the back porch while the children chased butterflies across the yard. She watched them for a long moment before speaking. "I've been thinking about that reunion." "So have I. I wish I could erase what I said." "You can't, I know." She looked at the garden. "But I can make sure I never become that person again." I smiled gently. That's all anyone can ask. She took a slow breath. Thank you for giving us the chance to learn instead of rescuing us again. Those words stayed with me long after they went home, because that was exactly what had happened. I hadn't destroyed my family. I had given them an opportunity to rebuild it on a healthier foundation. 6 months later, life looked completely different. Ryan and Melissa were managing their finances responsibly. They no longer depended on anyone else to maintain their lifestyle. The children visited often, and every visit was arranged with kindness and respect instead of expectation. As for me, I finally spent my retirement the way my husband and I had once imagined. I traveled with friends. I renovated my own kitchen, not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because it brought me joy. I planted more flowers than vegetables simply because I loved seeing color outside my window. Looking back, people still asked whether I regretted canceling those mortgage payments. My answer never changed. No, because I hadn't broken my family. I had broken an unhealthy pattern. Real love doesn't mean protecting people from every consequence. Real love encourages growth, even when the lesson is painful. Generosity is a beautiful gift, but only when it's freely appreciated, not quietly expected. The greatest lesson I learned wasn't about money. It was about self-respect. The moment I stopped paying for my place in someone else's life was the moment I discovered I had always deserved that place for free. And from that day forward, every seat at my table was shared through love, gratitude, and mutual respect not purchased with sacrifice.